Essendon and West Coast, back in the old days, they failed to disappoint, and that was the case last night.
Yeah, I love this for the season, that West Coast are now competitive again. So if you look across the board at the numbers, they matched Essendon pretty much in every key stat. Waterman is having some sort of year. This is a pivotal moment. Cripps,
what's he doing?
What is Cripps doing off the ball? Even Waterman says to him, don't give it away, you can see it. And he's shattered, so you'll see it here. He drops Martin Cripps just off the left. He's just there. And that is reversed. What a big moment that is. You can see the devastation there. And when you lose it by such a close margin, you go back to an experienced player amongst a young group. Unforgivable. Could have probably been the Volcano this morning, TJ, because they held on with a minute to go. They're in touch, and then they went back to the centre bounce, and Kelly actually wins the centre bounce clearance. Eagles coming forward again here with one last shot with a few seconds left. But Essendon hold on.
What do you do as a coach now, Adam Simpson with Cripps?
Yeah.
Like, important player, but that sort of action can't happen.
You'd know, wouldn't you? Like, you'd know as a player. He was okay in the game.
What would the response be in the rooms afterwards?
Oh, you'd be filthy.
Would the playing group express that?
I would hope so. I would hope they've got to the point where you say, we cannot accept that from a senior player in that moment to do that, because they've turned really everything around, and they're actually playing a respectable brand of football now. But Lordo, you want to speak about the Bombers and how they've improved?
Yeah, but rightly they've been criticised for years for their lack of defence. You know, they're so easy to cut through, but this is their last month, so they'll poor against Port Adelaide and Sydney earlier in the year, but they've finally got it together defensively. So look at the numbers. They've won 3 and drawn 1 in their last 4. And I think it's because of 2 men. I think it's pressure further afield, but Nick Martin behind the ball and also Mackay have been huge. So this is the first centre bounce. So Mackay, Martin is defending a little bit better than he was earlier in the year, but you see the pressure on the ball in their forward 50 as well. So that helps your defence. So it's not just about your back 6 or 7. It's the pressure you can put on in your front half. Even the big ruckman, Todd Goldstein, just a chase like that, that allows for you to get a second and a third man up, which has been really impressive from the Bombers. Again, pressure on the ball. So that allows for Big Mackay to play with more freedom than he has. This one here, you know, again, Nick Martin, it's such, everyone's buying in. Toddy Goldstein does it again, and then they're not only just defending, but then the ball is just coming back with interest like this. Langford's one of the most informed players in the game, so it's fantastic to see that they're finally getting consistent off the back of team defence.
And Kane, that turnaround for the Eagles you mentioned has been largely central to 3 players: Harley Reid, Jake Waterman, and this man Elliot Yeo, who had his 200th career game last night. Unfortunately, though, he has pinged a soft tissue ailment out of it. It's a groin problem, and given his issues in that space over the last few seasons, I would imagine he'll be spending some time on the sidelines, unfortunately, for the Eagles.
Yeah, well, it was a really good game of footy, I thought. It wasn't high pressure, and it wasn't to the standard of some of the other games in terms of the quality. But what I love about West Coast is that they are in the fight now, and they have been for the last 4 or 5 weeks since that Sydney game, and they really took it up to Essendon right from the start. It was a good 4-quarter performance, I thought. In the end, I thought Essendon just had too many weapons forward of the ball, and Zach Merritt, their inspirational skipper now, led the way with 3 goals. We'll get to him in a moment. Parrish, I thought, returned to some good form after a slow start to the year. And Nath, you want to highlight one of the Essendon young guns who's having a big year?
Well, they've got a few going through there at the moment to help out Zach Merritt. So Sam Durham's one of them. I do like Caldwell as well, but we're talking about Sam Durham. He plays a little bit of anger about him as well. So as you see here, just running away from stoppages. This is the mix that the Bombers needed to add to their midfield this year. 25 disposals, also kicked the goal. But like I said at the start, he's got some anger that he plays with, and I like that. He's got some real bull about him. I just like the way he plays, and I like the difference that he offers up the Bombers midfield.
Is that what they need? Some of that anger?
I think so. I think they've probably
team.
been nice for a long time, and I think that's the Essendon edge, and he's the exact player that Brad Scott's talking about when we play on the Essendon edge.
Brownie, another player with a similar backstory in that he took a while to get into the system is Nick Martin, who equally has had a major impact on this club, and he too has been important this year, and since that loss to Port Adelaide 4 weeks ago, players like him and Durham and others around them have stood up, and they've been really, really good. They've responded to that bad moment they had against the Power and influencing games like he did this way last night, Lordo.
And to the credit of the club and the recruiting team, well, Durham's come from Richmond VFL and Nick Martin was a supplementary topper.
From Perth as well. Imagine how the Eagles are feeling watching this guy do this last night when he was right there for them to pick both Perth-based clubs, and he went in the mid-season draft to Essendon.
And then the other one is when you get a player like Zach Merritt, I think he might have been in the 20s or something like that with the draft selection, and he's, as Brownie touched on, will be top 2 in the Brownlow most likely with what he does. And I think the kicking, you know, there's some players who are elite players in our game, but they don't kick it like Zach Merritt. Zach Merritt's a better kick than 99% of the AFL. He may well be the best kick in the game. So to kick 3 goals, Kane, is what added to his game.
Well, that's the thing. Like, he hadn't kicked 10+ goals in a season since his first year. So to have 6 to this point in the year, if he can get to sort of 18, 20 goals, that's what the best midfielders are doing. And there's a guy who looks like Tony Lockett playing for West Coast at the moment. That's Jake Waterman.
Or Fraser Gehrig more so, do you reckon?
Maybe. But his contest where Lordo spoke about Curnow and maybe not fighting as hard. This guy fights, and he really fights for the contest. Like, he wants to make that ball his own. He's great at protecting the space. And for a smaller forward who's almost playing the key forward role, I just think he's just been enormous what he's doing this year, and he's a very accurate set shot for goal.
And it's come from nowhere, hasn't it? The illness that he had last year and the unknown about him even returning to an AFL ground, let alone returning and playing this way as he now has done in the past 4 weeks.
And there's still a bottom 4 side, so you admire players who are performing like this in a forward line in a side that's struggling.